I am so excited to be here, as I am every single month, but this month is really special. Every month it seems like we have a new storyline, new drama, new lessons. Tonight is fantastic because I get to bring up Beth Tully, and when we think about Beth Tully, the quote, you guys know I love quotes, the quote that comes to mind that describes her experience and what we're going to hear tonight is this, from Winston Churchill. Success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. With that, Beth. All right, so as she gets settled, you guys know the deal. We're going to take questions at the end. Please feel free to tweet about us, to post, use our at Startup Grind ICT, and also the hashtag, okay? All right, so with that being said, welcome, Beth.
Thank you very much.
You're
great to be here.
It is. There are actually a few people who have been in your chair before. If you have been interviewed for Startup Grind, raise your hand. I'm talking about you, Cheryl. Cheryl's here, welcome. Beth, you are the second female entrepreneur that I have had the pleasure to interview for this series, so thank you for saying yes.
Thank you, you're welcome.
All right, so let's just jump right into it. Where are you from?
Wichita originally.
Okay.
Born here.
Yes.
Here until I left for grad school.
Okay.
And took a kind of meandering route for a few years and ended up back here in 92.
In 92? Okay. Tell us about what growing up for you was like. Was entrepreneurship part of your world when you were younger?
Absolutely not.
Not.
No. I think I am probably a great example, I'm almost dictionary version of passion for something and no entrepreneurial background to start with.
All right. Well, you talk about that passion and you mentioned dictionary. There was another book that inspired you about what we know you for, chocolate. Can you talk about what it was like to run across those early recipes?
Well, it kind of ties together because I was at a point in my life where I was kind of drilling myself into the ground. I was working for the Coca-Cola company, and I had a really great job, and it had excellent benefits and stock options, and I felt every day for almost 10 years that I was the tip of a spear, and I couldn't please the customer, and I couldn't please the company. And that's sort of not my MO. I'm a relationship person, and that I really struggled with that. So my 50th birthday is approaching, and we decided, my husband, who's sitting here, Jay, and I, well, I think I decided probably, but, sorry, honey, to have a birthday celebration. And so we had a big party in Cabo San Lucas, and after many, many, many tequilas, and enough red wine that at the end of the evening I spilled it on the white couch in the hotel. So I think I'd overserved myself for sure. I had an epiphany, and I've not had one since. It was a crystal moment in my drunkenness, and which is, I know it's an oxymoron, but or whatever. We all get choices in our lives, and it's not you don't get a second go round. You get one shot at it. And I'd spent the first 50 years of my life doing things that I was good at, because I was good at everything I'd done up to that point. But what it lacked was connection and love and passion and energy. And so as a parallel course, because I'm a super slow learner, and it took me 20 years to figure this out, I had discovered chocolate in grad school. And I knew the first time I worked with it that I couldn't put it down. And for me, that was a real crystal moment, because it defined passion. And I had never had that realization, I guess, ever, that I loved something so much that I couldn't put it down, that I needed to come back to it the next day, that I thought about it all the time, and that's what I wanted to do. So I had done chocolate for almost professionally, I think, and Jay was a big part of this too, for years and years and years, making chocolates at home for friends and family. Yeah. And that moment in Mexico was, I think, me realizing, and it was an aha moment. Right. I'm not a big Oprah fan, but it's, that's her aha moments, that it was time for me to either do what I love to do and take the risk and go down a road of passion and involvement and energy, or shut up, quit being a bitch, because I was horrible. And I was sure I'd be sick every Sunday night. I didn't want to go to work on Mondays. I should have known that, but again, it goes back to a very slow learning process for me.
That's right. So it's interesting because with most people, when we talk about background and where entrepreneurship kind of crossed paths, it happened either teenage years, it happened in college. Again, you jumped right through that thing, through 50 years to a big epiphany, and it brought you back to something that you loved, which was chocolate. What do you like about chocolate?
It's alive while you're working with it. It really is physiologically, it's in constant change, and that fascinated me. And so the fails in that were just, more ammunition and fire for me to buy another book, figure out what the hell I'd done wrong, why did those look, why didn't that turn out correctly? And it just fueled this fire that was so brilliant and so amazing. It was just, my heart was full when I worked with chocolate.
And so different than what you studied in school. Tell us about what you did study,
so
undergrad and grad.
When I was 9, I saw The Miracle Worker, which is the story of Helen Keller and her teacher, Anne Sullivan. And that really struck me. It was black and white. That's how old I am. And it was profound, but I was 9. And I realized in retrospect, what I wanted to do was be Anne Sullivan, because I had such a deep admiration for her. And to have a Helen Keller. That was aspirational for me at 9. So I went into speech pathology, and I never looked left or right. Mm-hmm. I never took the advice of a mentor. I never asked anybody, does this make sense? What do you think? I didn't even ask myself, what do I think?
But they would call that being driven. You're focused.
Yeah, focused, but with not healthy blinders. I think now, in retrospect, it would have been way better for me if I had talked to a high school counselor or friends, or before I jumped into it, because I spent 4 years in undergrad and I went to graduate school, and I got punched out to work, and my first day, actually my first week of work, I came home and told my first husband, I'm going to give this 10 years.
Really?
Well, you don't give something 10 years that you've just spent the last, 11 or 12 getting ready for.
That's right.
So, I don't know. Again, learning curve, I guess.
Absolutely. Where'd you graduate from? Tell them.
Wichita State, and then University of Michigan.
All right. Go Shocker.
Go Blue.
We always have to get those in there. So you entered corporate America. You said, again, what you did was working fine, okay, decently.
It was okay.
On the one side, that professional career track, but you had that passion. Beth, you're 50, you have the epiphany. You acted. What caused you to go from, I really have a passion for this, I really want to see something different, to actually acting on it?
For me, the biggest question or the biggest issue was, what if I fail? And it was more daunting for me because my husband's a firefighter, and I had a really lucrative job, so together our income was nice. And we had a lot of perks that were attached to that. And if I did this, I knew it had to be all in. And, this is one of those moments that, sorry, I don't know why I'm emotional,
Already.
But it was a really important moment for my partner to give me permission, because I needed first to give myself permission to fail. Because it's not, I can tell you, I sit here tonight and tell you, failure is not the end of the world. But that support took that last weight off, and that was a real gift.
That's right, because again, the change came when things were going well.
Right.
It didn't necessarily come when things are broken. And it's a lot easier sometimes to make changes when things are broken. But when things are good, it almost takes even more courage to step out there and to have that support, that home team support is amazing. So what was the first step you took after you made that decision? How did you begin to rewrite your path?
At the time I was working for Coca-Cola, I had a tremendous boss, best boss I had in my whole work history, till now. But I am I'm a very focused person when I'm working on something, and I made it my job for that next year to reach out to the Kansas Small Business Development Corps to start asking questions, trying to find some mentors, everything that I didn't know how to do. And while I was at the Small Business Development group, you have to take a class, or you used to have to get entrance in.
Basically. 3 M's.
Mm-hmm. So I'd never thought about the 3 M's. Yeah. But I'm telling you, it made the organization of the company so much easier for me to acknowledge, first of all, I'm not the smartest person in the room, and that surrounding yourself with good people that can do the things well that you can't do is essential. And I think it's a pitfall sometimes that first you think, I don't have the money, or I don't want to share.
Yes.
And I don't know, for some reason, luckily, I got that part.
Good, you got it early. So we have Elaine in the crowd from KSBDC. The 3 M's are money, marketing, and management. Marcia Stevens will love you for saying
It was my guiding principle when we first got started. I say that a lot when I'm talking to young adults, that it's so important to understand. And it's so simple because it's really 3 big buckets. Yeah. But you have to address them all, and you're not good. It's going to be rare that one person's good at that.
Right. And you hit on something that we see a lot over at that center, and that is sometimes as entrepreneurs, we want to make sure that things are perfect before we talk about it. And the willingness for you to share led you to some learning that helped you to launch. What was launch like for you?
Terrifying, empowering. Yeah. The day that well, first of all, Jay stayed up all night because we're like do-it-yourselfers, and so our whole original Coca Dolce, which was up on 37th Street, was done by us, right? We built the things and everything. And he was up all night trying to hang the last light fixtures. I went home to sleep for a couple hours, and I came back and the door was locked, and it was like 6 or 7 in the morning. And I realized it was for me really profound, because I had the key. And it was forever my challenge and gift and responsibility to take advantage of every day, and that I made or break, I would make or break those days. Nobody else was going to do it. It was me, and that was a tremendous moment for me. And I hope I've never taken that for advantage, taken advantage of that, because it was really profound.
I bet. So the physical act of you having the key, opening the door, that definitely was a milestone. But you had to also take your passion and make it into a business. Beyond the mentoring, beyond the learning, you had a vision to create a brand around a passion.
Right.
What'd you do to do that?
Surrounded myself with creative people. I had everything here. Yeah. And I was really fortunate to find a group of really talented individuals that could take what was here and put it here.
What was there? Share with us what you saw.
Everybody's seen Chocolat. That's actually my fantasy chocolate shop, with the spinning plate and the whole mystery, and that was what I wanted. And Johnny Depp, but that did not work out. But that was my first plan.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. But what came out of that was a real determination to have a space that was warm and welcoming, and that our employees were loved and taken care of and respected, and to create the best chocolate we could by hand, and to assist in elevating the business community in Wichita. I mean, all those things were, I'm 50 and I'm thinking, God, I better make something out of these years, and what do I want to contribute, and what's my legacy, basically. And it was cultivating people, and cultivating that brand.
You can have a passion for the product, but if you don't have a passion for people, that could be a missed opportunity. How did you translate the vision, the desire to create not just a chocolate shop, but a chocolate lounge? And how did you instill that vision in your employees?
Because I'd had a kind of miserable experience with bosses over my wildly nonlinear arc of things I'd done, I made a vow to myself when we were in the early stages of planning that if I ever, that I was going to have a chance to be an employer, and that the one thing that I would do was promise those employees that I would keep them emotionally and physically safe. And the emotional part is really important. I think especially young employees. I had a boss that actually stood in my doorway, doubled up his fist, and he said, "I don't know what the fuck you're doing." And he was like so enraged that he was, and I thought, I'm never gonna be like that. Other than maybe the F-bomb, I apologize for that.
Now PG-13, okay.
I'm not very discreet, sorry.
One allowance.
Okay, I'm done.
But that's crazy.
It was. I mean, it's inappropriate. But how many times do you end up in situations with people where their way of training or coaching is humiliation? And I've always believed a mistake's an opportunity, and it's okay, and we'll fix it and we'll move on. And I spent tons of time with our employees and made sure they knew that they were loved and appreciated and not in danger in any way, that they could make a mistake, that they could be empowered to correct them, and that we'd move on down the road.
Wow. How many of you all are trying to build brands? In the room, just show of hands. All right, how many of those brands are wrapped around products? So Beth, we've got some explaining to do. So your vision, you cultivated your people, and then the experience started to happen. Tell us about what success looked like for you in the shop in Wichita, and how you moved as well.
So we opened November of 2005, and it was like a tiger by the tail. There was so much neighborhood pent-up demand that when we first opened, the first day our cash register didn't work, and so we gave all our product away. And anybody who deals with product, that is like terrifying. However, those people came back the next day and they spent money. And there were so many people that wanted us to succeed, and honestly, I think there's an element, certainly in my story, of luck, or maybe I'd want to say great timing at the same time that the inspiration was sort of being birthed. And we had the enviable problem for years of managing growth. That was our biggest challenge. So we redid the store we moved to Bradley Fair in 2009, and there's a little bit of a story about that. I don't think George Laham's here, is he? George and I have been friends for years, and I had gone to him to look for space when we were first doing Coca Dolce, and to say that the reception was chilly is probably correct. Good luck, keep in touch. Yeah. And so the only place we could find on the northeast side of town was that space. And people in the community, it's the rising tide that elevates all the ships. It was something that people wanted. we were able, because we were persistent, to stay consistent. Okay. And they came back, and we created loyal customers really early.
How did you market your product? How did you market about even your launch?
Carrie Rangers.
Good old Carrie.
She was asking if I had a good one-liner tonight. We might have to tell her that's the one-liner. She called me this afternoon to see if I was going to swear. So, not kidding. We lived under a very fortunate light because we didn't really have to advertise. The business just continued, the ripples continued, and we just continued to be consistent and care about our customers and try to be a good contributor to the community, and the community responded to that. So I don't credit myself as much as I credit all the individuals over the years that said, that is a cool thing, and I love it, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to bring my friends.
Amazing. Did you, when you began, when you decided to truly commit to this, was it in your mind to grow? Was it in your mind to try to duplicate that process?
That's an interesting question. So let's see. At first, no. But something interesting happened in the last couple years before we decided to open the store in Overland Park. And that was, I realized, and I think Jay did too, that something also quite astounding had happened at Coco Dolce. And that was that we had created a team of people who were loyal to the company, had drank the Kool-Aid early, but actually then it turned into a passion for what we were doing. And that we had gone from a succession plan that was probably liquidating or doing something, selling, I don't know, to creating, we had a legacy. And so that really switched our thinking about, do we stay where we are? Because the store in Bradley Fair is amazing. Or do we grow? And we both agreed that continuing to grow the business was the best legacy that we could leave for these kids that had come to us and had given their whole work careers at that point, which was 10, 11 years, to helping us grow that business.
How did you choose the Kansas City market as opposed to a different location in Wichita?
No offense to the West Side, because we love the West Side at SASNAK.
Oh no. Shall we move on?
At the time, I didn't think that there was enough. I thought we were fully penetrated in terms of customers in Wichita, so we had started looking outside.
You handled that marvelously.
Thank you.
Yeah, fully penetrated. Okay. So Kansas City looked appealing. Location, we all hear and we all know. Talk about how you ended up with the location decision that you all made in Kansas City.
Well,
what appealed to you about it?
Okay, it was a entertainment area, and it was affiliated with a gorgeous new museum. And the developers, the snake oil salespeople that they are, did a brilliant job of presenting the future, opportunity, I guess, at Prairie Fire. And we had been looking in that area because South Johnson County, that's just booming. And we both felt that was a good place. We looked at Town Center. I mean, we looked at a lot of the locations up there. But I guess it's, a whole room of people can be wrong because we settled on the Prairie Fire development.
Now, it's been publicized about the success that you all have had in terms of revenue when you began to look at growth. Can you talk about roughly range? What were you guys pulling in Wichita?
The Wichita store did before PF.
Before, go ahead.
1.2 million.
1.2. And then as you were looking for growth and looking for the location, what were some factors that you wanted to make sure that you were positioning yourselves for? Traffic counts? What were you looking at? Because there's some people in here who might be trying to position themselves to grow too.
I don't remember who told us this. Jay, who told us about going into a parking lot and seeing what kind of cars are parked in that? Was that Gary Gibbs? So we have family and have spent some time in the Kansas City area, but didn't know it intimately. And so we started just going up and driving around and looking at locations and thinking about things. And we knew from Coco Dolce that traffic was essential, because we went from like sitting at the folding table, kids' table at Thanksgiving, to like being at the adult table at Bradley Fair. I mean, it was unbelievable. Our business doubled when we opened the doors. So we were looking for that, but the cachet of this kind of museum entertainment complex overrode, I think, for all of us, our bankers, everybody, the thought that it could actually fail, because it was so cool that we thought this will be perfect. Restaurants, we know adjacency. For us, adjacency to a restaurant is helpful. So many of our customers come in after Il Vicino at Bradley Fair. So we thought, how can this fail? There's like 4 restaurants and a little bit of cool retail, and what could possibly go wrong?
Okay, so you were early. You saw the possibility.
Very
Do you think
early.
you were early?
We were.
Okay. And again, there's something to be said. There's a title for it, early adopters. That always seems to get praised, those risk takers. Can you talk about what your first couple of months there were like in Kansas City after you guys opened?
Well, I think for me, it was so satisfying to do something we weren't sure we could do, and that was take our culture that was very carefully grown over time and transplant it to someplace 180 miles away. And we were able to do that, and to do that really well. And we got the store open. It was beautiful. We found great people. So it was all perfect from that perspective.
Before we move on, how did you balance the 2 locations?
Well, again, great staff. We had Coco Dolce still has a young woman that was functioning in an operations position, and I really credit her with a lot of what happened there, because she took the message and ran with it. It's like taking the flag and running up the hill, and she did a brilliant job. I tried to get up there once a week. We were up there a lot when it first opened, but then I would try to get up once a week, just to kick the tires and see how everybody was. And
Absolutely. That FaceTime is important.
it is.
Absolutely. So again, you've developed a culture that you held on to. You cultivated and inspired that leadership in others and let it go so that you were able to manage the growth. That's really important too at some points. So a couple of more months passed, things are going well, and even a magazine article had named you, what was the title you earned?
One of the top chocolatiers in the country.
What happened about isn't that awesome? Isn't that awesome? Okay, what was the quote I said? Success is not final. Say final. Failure is not fatal. Say fatal. A few days after that magazine nomination or announcement, what happened?
Well, it was really obvious after the sort of looky-loos and the let's try the new place happened that it was shocking and scary. Very quickly, probably 4 months into our time there, we knew we were in trouble. But it took us, we opened in May, and it took us until December to realize that I was taking in December, which is harvest for chocolate, right? In fact, most chocolatiers will make most of their money in like 2 weeks in the year. I mean, the rest of the time you're just doing maintenance. And I had to take a loan in December to cover payroll. And I thought, oh, I'm screwed. This is really a problem. And it didn't get better. And so we tried to figure out alternatives to just closing shop. And we finally had to just do a ninja move. after closing on a Sunday night, Jay and some of the staff drove up, and we cleared out the cash registers, and we put a note on the door, because the developer wouldn't talk to us. And so we're like, help us out. Well, what can we do here? And he's not a very enlightened person and had a really difficult time not accepting any responsibility for and working with the tenants to try to figure something out. So we had a really very brief just a little over a year.
That key was different for you, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, the coverage was different. How did you manage the news articles, probably the calls?
Yeah, there's when it's so great when you get the sort of value added benefit of somebody covering a story or telling a great story. Well, the same, that door swings both ways. And so when things aren't going so well, that news is still going to be covered as well. So, anybody that followed Coco Dolce probably knows that we were foreclosed on by the bank. And in short order after that, Jay and I had to declare bankruptcy. And then they wanted to liquidate our assets and finally decided they'd offer it at auction. And so a company that I knew, and we had actually talked previously about being equity partners in the business. When it was looking like it could be a $2.5 million deal, they were all in. But so in auction, they bought our assets. And then Coco Dolce became solely owned by another company. And it was, not as hard. It was hard, and it was so public.
Yeah.
And I sort of tucked in for a while. I just kind of laid low because I really didn't want to answer questions from everybody.
Right.
But I did, here's a bright spot about that. I do like to do things in a big way,
yeah.
And we failed big. We didn't just kind of limp to the finish line. We took the thing and drove it into the ground by 6 feet. It was... And it exploded, so.
So before I was an entrepreneur, I used to be a reporter at the Eagle, and in the industry since I was in middle school, it seems like. The media is a great communication outlet, but as she said, they're not friends, okay? Managing that and being able to work through that is very powerful. I appreciate your transparency in that. You also said something very early when we asked, what did you do? The behavior that you took to launch from your passion and your dream, and you talked about permission that your husband and your family had given you to do this. How did you manage that? Because when it crashed and burned, there was a different kind of outcome for you guys.
Well, and those ripples, just like the early ripples with Coco Dolce, those ripples, in some respects, still haven't ended for Jay and I in terms of our personal situation. They're a lot better. And I think I spent the first several months apologizing a lot. Because it was still my passion. And I felt solely responsible for the loss of employment, for all the money we lost. It was just, at the time, it was almost too much to wrap my arms around.
Beth, now look, you can try to get me to cry. I'm not going to cry. Because there are some people today who are not launching because they're scared of what happened. But that's not how the story ends, right?
No, it's not. And this sounds super dramatic, but there is life after death. I think that giving yourself permission to fail is one thing. Failing is kind of puts the bow on it. And I don't think there was ever a moment where I thought, I can't survive this. I'll be okay. We'll be okay. But it's a real test, I think, of human spirit to be resilient. And to, I used to talk to the white kids and I'd say, it's not about if you're going to make a mistake, it's how you respond to the mistakes that happen in your life, and that you have to bounce. And my inclination, quite honestly, wasn't necessarily to bounce. And I might or might not have stayed home a couple days and drank too much wine, but that's okay. The interesting part of that story for me was that when the other company acquired us, it never dawned on me, ever. And I have a tremendous group of friends that we used to be in a Perspectives group together with the chamber. Wow, Bill. And I don't know. I had listened to stories, and I just never thought that I would be an afterthought or a coda or a footnote to Coca Dolce. That just never dawned on me. So I've had the great fortune, and I think this was one of those times that really served me well, where not burning bridges,
right.
Appreciating and loving the people that are in your life and your relationships makes a difference. Because I was lucky enough when Coca Dolce was really new at Bradley Fair to meet John Rolfe.
Yeah.
And it was always a special friendship, but he saved my life.
John, wave. Before you keep going, you see her tears. Remember to tweet questions. They're coming up. Q&A's coming up. You don't want to miss this opportunity to ask someone with this story questions. So again, the company had taken over your baby, your vision, maybe different styles, but there was your story, and John enters it. Talk about that relationship and what happened next.
I've always viewed John as this sort of savant, such a smart guy, and so kind. And his father is like that, his wife is like that. They're just such great people. And I had shared with John some of the things that were happening, and I mean, he was aware. We had talked a few times. But when I knew it was coming, or suspected it was coming, he said, "You want to come to work for SASNAK?" And I thought, what? I thought I'd be out networking at Startup Grind, giving out, just home number business cards to find a job. Yeah. And not only did he offer me a job, but he offered me the space to get my mojo back. Because I think if anything, as a creative person, that was the trick when I left Coca Dolce, is that I lost that energy and that passion. Well, the good news is it wasn't all about chocolate. Because I have that same excited feeling, the love and the warmth and all those things that sound kind of touchy-feely about doing something with people that you love and doing work that is good.
Even if it's work for a good friend and you are not necessarily the owner. How did you manage that?
After Prairie Fire crashed and burned, I was kind of relieved, honestly, to have a little break from having to make all the decisions. And that's not probably helpful for a lot of you who are on this course. And
there's days.
Yeah.
If we're honest with ourselves, aren't there some days? Aren't there some days?
Yeah. Oh, I'm telling you. So that was honestly a relief for a lot of reasons, but it let me thrive again.
What does SASNAK do?
SASNAK is a restaurant management. Let's see how I do, John. I've never had employee orientation. Here we go. All right. Woo, thanks. Thanks for the encouragement. There's a lot of SASNAK people here. We'll find out really soon how I do. It's a restaurant management company that owns and operates Applebee's in Iowa, the Carlos O'Kelly's chain, and the Good Egg in Bradley Fair, and now our new restaurant concept, Homegrown, on the west side.
On the west side. And how did you get your mojo back? What do you do there?
That's the other thing that's really awesome. John understands how to I think it's rare, but understands how to take a pack of wildly different people with different skill sets, but all really talented and passionate in their own ways, and let them do what they need to do. And the liberating part of that was that, I think it was serendipitous, honestly, but I came in at a really good time, so I immediately felt useful. And I had so much fun working in the culinary world again, and being able to sort of at least shepherd some of the menu ideas and to do those kind of things. So that was really fun.
Any new ahas?
That's a good question. I think just a reiteration of old aha, which is life's really short. Spend time with people that you love. Respect and have compassion for people, and understand that just as easily as it was there, it can be gone, and that's not the end of the world. It's just a new beginning, but you just have to look at it that way.
Those are your ahas. Any final message before we go to Q&A that you want, if people didn't hear anything else you said tonight, what do you want them to walk out of here with?
Do what you love. Don't spend time drilling yourself into something that doesn't let you aspire to excellence, that you feel is sort of an average pursuit of whatever it is. Life goes by like that, and you just have to reach out and grab it.
That is awesome. Again, success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Thank you, Beth.
We are actually going to change it up a little bit. So if you have a question, I'm going to handle this side of the room, and Nick is going to handle this side of the room. So if you have a question, right here in front.
Hey, we love that. So
Thanks.
Great. Everything at Homegrown is so on trend, local. What part did you play in that? And tell us a little bit about that.
So, John and Lauren, this is their first venture, and both John and Lauren had a very clear idea of what this restaurant should be. And it was one of building community over food, of celebrating what's local, for dealing with people with sensitivity and compassion, and to ultimately touch people in a way that changes things, to really let it be, in addition to hopefully making a profit, which is important, it could be in a kind of in a way, an agent of change, something that people want to go back and do. And so I came in at the time where I helped with menu development. That was really my job. I have a scar with 5 stitches from working in the kitchen. I hadn't worked that much in a kitchen that had fire and sharp things. Yeah, I could just stand there and talk and cut myself. So anyway, that was an eye-opener. Did it answer the question?
Question to your left.
Hi, you mentioned that with the chocolate that you had really good success with employees. Are there any pointers about finding employees? Because I think a lot of people struggle with getting somebody that's going to stay and be dedicated and represent the brand.
Until very recently, we never advertised for employees. I found for our particular business, word of mouth with our current employees was the most powerful way to bring in like-minded people. And that worked so well for us for years and years and years. It wasn't until about the time I left, just in that last little arc, that I would say, in maybe 6 months, that we started doing some like job board postings. But a lot of all of our employees to start with were high school age or early college, and they just opted to switch career paths and stay with us. And that says a lot too, I think, to a prospective employee, is this is a fun place to work, and it's really terrific. Beth and Jay love you. We'll take good care of you, and that's appealing. We never paid the best in terms of hourly wages, but as most of us can attest, money isn't necessarily a driver, and we were lucky enough to find kids. I'd say almost all of them that wasn't their concern. Is that helpful? Okay.
To your right. In hindsight, as you look at the beginning of the failure, is there a time where you say, if I'd pulled the plug here, we would have made it?
Yes. I would say probably in the fall. It would have been a really quick run. It would have been from May to September or October. The problem is, for me at least at that time, was we're getting into our peak season. And I wouldn't say I took my eye off the ball, but I think we were all banking on the fact that once the holidays hit, because in the early days, cash flow was a nightmare at Coco Dolce, and so we did a lot of planning so that we could get through these non-chocolate months after Mother's Day until Halloween. And so we were relying on what we knew about our Wichita store to be able to get us through the holidays. Hindsight, we should have pulled the plug earlier.
In light of that, if you would give advice to anyone here, was there emotional issues that got you to going too far? Or was it more logical that you would have said, if you had been more logical?
That's a good question. More like, we've got to make this work. We're just going to work our asses off and we'll get it done. Yes, I would say from my perspective, because I am the eternal optimist. And I always believe, I am always a glass, not just half full, it's full. It's just the way I'm a blue sky girl. And so what happened is that when we were negotiating with the Bird's Eye Holding Group, this is the group that owns Coco Dolce now, they had a CFO that was brilliant, and I had known him for years. And he started looking at our performance and our financials. And he was the head. He ended up being the head. I was the heart. And that goes back to the 3 M's. That's just not my area. I obviously looked numbers every day and all of that sort of thing, but I was still believing that it was going to be, that we could make it work. And he finally said in December, "You are going to lose everything if you don't get out of this." And it still took us until July, and we did lose everything. But, I had warning, so.
Question to your left.
Beth.
Hi, Michael.
How are you?
Good.
Good. I applaud you for putting your heart out here. This has been very inspirational. But my question is, you mentioned earlier that it took a while to get George Laham on board. What was the tipping point? And once you were successful in that location, what were his thoughts?
Well, the interesting thing about George is he's a watcher. And he was watching us. And I don't know, he came in a few times and was surprised. He'd say, "You're really busy." We are. Yeah, we are. Sucks to be you, but, and it was really funny because I felt a little burned by, and I understand now, I get it completely, but at the time, there was a little bit of ego in thinking that we had the best new thing and that we could go any place we wanted, and that wasn't the case. but George had been watching, and so he called me in early in 2009 and said, hey, I want to show you Cibola. We cleaned it up, and I just want you to see it. And I'm thinking, Cibola? So I got there, and the old tower at Cibola had one table set with a white tablecloth, 4 wine glasses, because I had my broker with me, and he had Christy Royce, if you know Christy, and 2 bottles of my very favorite Pinot Noir. And I said, what are you doing, George? And he said, well, let's just have a glass of wine. I just wanted to show you the restaurant. And I said, I'm not going to take this restaurant. Bah. And he said, no, just bear with me. We drank a bottle of wine, and we're in the second one. And he said, let me show you something. He got out blueprints, and he said, I want Coco Dolce right here. And I said, no, you didn't want me before. Well, he's really good at massaging a bruised ego. And he is a great landlord. So I told him that spot won't work. There's no traffic. We're next to the guest services building. And he said, well, sit in the parking lot and just watch. And so Jay and I did. We went over and sat and watched the gazillions of cars that drive through that corner every day. And negotiated the deal and never looked back. I mean, for our business, it was the best decision we made early on in the growth of Coco Dolce.
Thank you, Beth. Let's give her a round of applause.